The rain-slicked streets of Eldridge Hollow gleamed under the sodium glow of flickering street lamps, turning the cracked asphalt into a mirror of shattered dreams. Arya huddled in the shadow of a derelict warehouse, her small frame trembling not just from the chill seeping through her thin jacket, but from the fear that clawed at her chest. At 12 years old, she knew better than to be out here alone after dark, especially with the whispers of trouble that haunted the edges of this forgotten town. Her backpack, heavy with the few possessions she'd grabbed in haste, pressed against her back like an accusation. Footsteps echoed from the alleyway, heavy and deliberate, closing in. She pressed herself flatter against the cold brick, heart pounding like a trapped bird, whispering a silent plea to the night. The low rumble cut through the downpour first, a deep, throaty growl that vibrated the air like thunder on the horizon. Headlights pierced the gloom, twin beams slicing through the rain as a lone motorcycle crested the hill, its chrome accents flashing like lightning. The rider, clad in weathered leather, etched with the faded insignia of the Iron Vow, a coiled serpent around a broken chain, eased off the throttle, the engine's snarl fading to a wary purr. Miles Carter, 41, and built like the storms he rode through, scanned the shadows with eyes hardened by years of unseen battles. His beard, streaked with grey, caught the droplets, and scars peeked from the collar of his jacket, reminders of an explosion that had stolen more than his memories. He lived day to day now, piecing together a life from fragments, the open road, the brotherhood of his crew, and the hollow ache of knowing something vital was missing, though he couldn't name it. No family, no ties, or so he believed. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the patter of rain, and Arya's stifled gasp. Dismounting with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent decades on two wheels, Miles approached the warehouse, boots splashing in puddles that reflected his silhouette like a ghost. "Hey, kid," he called out, voice gravelly but steady, laced with the quiet authority of someone who'd stared down worse than urban shadows. "You lost? This ain't no place for a girl your age." Arya peeked out, her wide eyes locking onto his, a flicker of desperate hope battling the terror. The footsteps from the alley grew louder, two figures emerging, rough men with hooded stares, their intent clear in the way they sized her up. One stepped forward, smirking through the rain. "Mind your business, biker. She's with us." Miles didn't flinch. His hand rested lightly on the handlebars, but his stance widened, a wall of unyielding resolve. "Looks to me like she's scared spitless. Walk away, or we got a problem." The air thickened with tension, rain drumming on his helmet like impatient fingers. The men hesitated, exchanging glances, then backed off into the gloom, muttering curses that dissolved into the storm. Arya exhaled, sliding her backpack strap tighter, but she didn't run. Instead, she stepped forward, rain streaking her face like tears she refused to shed. Up close, Miles saw the dirt smudged on her cheeks, the way her hands clenched as if holding onto a lifeline. Something about her tugged at him, a vague echo like a half-remembered dream. You stopped," she whispered, voice barely audible over the drizzle. Miles shrugged, pulling off his glove to offer a hand. "Couldn't just ride by." "Name's Miles. What's yours?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting the shadows to reclaim her. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of secrets too heavy for her shoulders, she leaned in close. "Starlight, Willow, Echo, 7. The words hung between them, three simple terms followed by a number, spoken with the precision of a ritual. Time fractured. Miles's world tilted, the rain blurring into a cascade of buried images, a hidden cabin in the woods, the scent of pine and fear sweat, hurried whispers in the dead of night, a tiny hand in his as they fled through back roads, promises etched in blood and desperation. "If we're ever split, kid, you say the code, I'll find you, always." His knees buckled. The ground rushed up, but he caught himself against the bike, breath ragged as the avalanche hit. Memories flooded back, not in gentle waves, but a torrent that drowned him. Arya, his Arya, the daughter he'd thought lost to the void of his amnesia. The explosion in that godforsaken warehouse raid years ago, when he'd been chasing ghosts of his own past, shielding her from a life that had torn them apart. hideouts in dusty motels, her laughter echoing as he taught her to braid leather cords for luck charms, the broken vow to a woman who'd vanished, leaving him to raise their girl alone amid the roar of engines and the pull of the club. He'd blacked out, believing he had no one, no blood to claim, wandering the roads with the Ironvow brothers who became his anchor. But here she was, flesh and fear, whispering their code, the one they'd invented on a starlit night. Starlight for the sky we chase, willow for the bends in the road, echo for the calls that come back, 7 for the luck we make. Tears carved hot paths down his face, mixing with the rain, the first real ones since the accident that had rewritten his soul, not for the years stolen by blank pages in his mind, but for the moments he'd missed, her first steps without him, the birthdays celebrated in hiding, the quiet fears she'd faced alone. He collapsed to one knee, pulling her into a fierce embrace, the leather of his jacket soaking through her clothes. "Aria," he choked out, the name a lifeline surfacing from the depths. "My girl, how did you find me?" She clung back, small sobs muffled against his chest. "I never stopped looking, Dad. The code. It was all I had left of us." The rain eased to a mist, the warehouse looming like a sentinel over their reunion. Miles held her tighter, the weight of rediscovered fatherhood settling like armor. But questions burned. Why was she here, alone and hunted? What shadows from their past had driven her into the night? As the first hints of dawn bled across the sky, painting the serpent on his jacket in hues of gold, Miles knew this was no mere chance. It was a promise reignited, one that would drag him back into the fray, calling on the loyalty of his chosen family to protect what corruption and time had tried to steal. The road ahead stretched long and unforgiving, but for the first time in years, he wasn't riding blind. Word count, 872. The mist clung to the dawn like a reluctant shroud, softening the jagged edges of Eldridge Hollow as Miles and Aria made their way toward the flickering neon sign of the Rusty Anchor Diner. The motorcycle's engine had purred to life again, but Miles rode slow this time, Aria perched behind him, her arms wrapped tight around his waist, the backpack slung across her lap like a shield. The warmth of her against his back was a revelation, a steady pulse cutting through the fog of his resurfaced memories. He could still feel the echo of that code, starlight, willow, echo, 7, vibrating in his bones, unlocking doors he'd long thought sealed. But with the recollections came the shadows, fragmented visions of frantic escapes, the acrid bite of smoke from that warehouse blast, and the gnawing certainty that whatever had torn them apart wasn't finished with them yet. They pushed through the diner's door, the bell jingling like a hesitant welcome. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of sizzling bacon and stale coffee, the kind of place where truckers nursed mugs and locals swapped stories of better days. Miles guided Aria to a corner booth, its vinyl seats cracked and faded, offering a view of the rain-swept parking lot. She slid in first, eyes darting to the windows as if expecting those alley figures to reappear. He sat across from her, shrugging off his jacket, the iron vow patch catching the dim light like a badge of forgotten oaths. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag reading Lila approached, notepad in hand. "Coffee for you, black as usual?" she asked Miles, her voice carrying the familiarity of a man who haunted these stops like a ghost. "Yeah, and hot chocolate for the kid. Extra marshmallows if you've got 'em." He glanced at Aria, who managed a small nod, her fingers tracing patterns on the tabletop. Willow branches, perhaps, or the bends of roads they'd once fled down. As Lila walked away, Miles leaned forward, his voice low, gravel rough from disuse after years of solitary rides. "Talk to me, Aria. What's got you out here in the storm? Last I remember, we were holed up in that cabin off Route 17, teaching you how to spot constellations through the trees. Then the blast, and everything went dark." The words tasted like ash, pulling at the edges of his amnesia. But her presence sharpened them, filling in the blanks with painful clarity. Aria's gaze dropped to her hands, knuckles white. "It was after that, Dad. You were in the hospital for weeks. Coma, they said. When you woke up, you didn't know me. The doctors called it amnesia from the explosion. Mum, She was already gone by then, remember? That night we ran from the city, when those men came looking for you because of the club stuff." She paused, the weight of it pressing down, her voice a whisper that carried the chill of those hidden years. Miles's mind reeled, piecing it together. The iron vows, old entanglements with shady deals gone wrong, rivals who'd targeted his family to settle scores. He'd shielded her then, vowing under starlit skies that no harm would touch her, their code a secret pact against the world's cruelties. But the blast, meant for him, collateral in a war of loyalties, had erased him from her life as surely as if he'd vanished. "I got out when they released you," she continued, eyes glistening but fierce. "Foster homes bouncing around, but I kept looking. Heard rumors of a biker with your scars, riding with the Vow crew. Tracked you to this town last week, those guys in the alley. They're from the old crew, the ones who caused the blast. They found me first, said if I didn't tell them where you stashed the evidence, the ledger from those deals, they'd make sure we never saw each other again." Her words hung heavy, stirring the moral fire in Miles's chest. Evidence? Flashes hit him, a hidden journal, scribbled promises to expose the corruption that had poisoned the club, turning brothers against blood. He'd buried it deep, a vow to clean the rot, but the amnesia had let it fester in the dark. The hot chocolate arrived, steam curling like ghosts from the mug, but neither touched it. Miles's hand reached across, covering hers, a father's grip, rediscovered and unyielding. "I thought I had no one, Arya. Rode these roads thinking I was just a shadow, piecing together fragments with the brothers who stuck by me. Jax, the Vow's sergeant. He pulled me from the wreck, never asked for more than my word I'd ride true. But this, you're my promise, kid. The one I made to your mum under that willow tree before she slipped away into the night." Tears pricked his eyes again. Not the collapse of before, but a steady burn of resolve. Redemption wasn't just memory, it was action, honoring the loyalty that had survived the void. Outside, the sky lightened to a bruised grey, the first rays glinting off distant chrome as more bikes approached. The Vow convoy, drawn by Miles's earlier radio check-in, engines rumbling like a gathering storm. Jax led them, a bear of a man with a salt and pepper beard and eyes that saw through lies, pulling into the lot with a nod through the window. Miles stood helping Arya up, the booth creaking in protest. "We're not running blind anymore," he said, voice steady as the road. "I'll call in the crew, we'll dig up that ledger, face whatever's chasing us. But first, we get you safe." She nodded, a spark of the girl he'd lost igniting in her eyes, the one who'd once echoed his laughs across dusty trails. As they stepped out, the brotherhood encircled them, Jax dismounting with a clap on Miles's shoulder. "Heard you found something worth riding for," he rumbled, glancing at Arya with quiet understanding. No questions, just the unspoken vow of chosen family. Stand together or fall alone. The air hummed with potential, the scent of wet earth and exhaust mingling as engines idled, waiting for the word. Miles mounted up, Arya behind him once more, the code now a bridge rather than a ghost. But as they rolled out, leading the pack toward the old hideout beyond the hollow, a distant siren wailed, a reminder that corruption didn't yield easy, and justice demanded more than tears. The road curved ahead, willow-like, echoing with promises yet to be kept, the weight of honor pulling them forward into the unknown. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The convoy cut through the morning haze like a serpent uncoiling, engines thrumming in unison as they left the rusty anchor behind. Miles led the pack, his bike slicing the damp air, Arya's grip on him a constant anchor amid the roar. The Iron Vow riders flanked them, 8 strong now, with Jax riding shotgun on Miles's left, his massive frame hunched over the handlebars, eyes scanning the horizon for threats that lingered like smoke. The road twisted through Eldridge Hollow's outskirts, past rusted silos and fields choked with wild grass, the sun climbing low to cast long shadows that danced like uneasy spectres. Exhaust mingled with the earthy tang of dew-kissed soil, a sensory reminder that they were alive, bound by threads stronger than blood. Arya's cheek pressed against Miles's back, her breath steadying as the miles unspooled. In the fragments he'd reclaimed, he saw her younger self, tiny hands clutching his vest during midnight rides. Her giggles lost to the wind as they evaded shadows from the club's tangled past. "Dad," she murmured over the engine's growl. "The hideout. It's the old mill by the river bend. I marked the spot with that willow carving you taught me." Her words stirred another echo, a promise whispered in a storm-lashed night, vowing to bury truths too dangerous to carry openly. The ledger, pages of scrawled deals, names of crooked officials and rival crews who'd twisted the vow's honor into chains of greed. He'd hidden it to protect her, to one day expose the rot without dragging innocence under. But amnesia had buried it deeper than dirt, letting corruption spread unchecked. Jack signaled a pull-off at the river's edge, the group banking into a gravel lot overgrown with thistles. Engines cut to silence, replaced by the rush of water over stones and the creak of cooling metal. The old mill loomed ahead, its weathered timbers sagging like a forgotten vow, vines clawing at the walls as if to reclaim it for the wild. Jax dismounted first, his boots crunching stones as he approached Miles. "This the place?" he asked, voice a low rumble that carried the weight of brotherhood. Jax had been there from the start, pulling Miles from the warehouse rubble, piecing him back together when doctors shook their heads. No blood between them, but loyalty forged in fire, the kind that didn't question codes or cries in the night. Miles nodded, helping Arya down, her feet touching ground with a hesitance that twisted his gut. "Here, buried it under the floorboards near the water wheel. Arya's got the mark." She led the way, slipping through a side door splintered by time, the air inside thick with mildew and the faint, musty scent of secrets long dormant. Flashlights pierced the gloom, beams dancing over dust motes as the crew fanned out. Silent sentinels, tools in hand, respecting the gravity without a word. Miles knelt beside her, prying at a loose plank with calloused fingers, the wood groaning like a confession. Splinters bit his skin, but he welcomed the sting. It grounded him in this reclaimed reality, father to a girl who'd survived on whispers and will alone. The plank lifted, revealing a hollow beneath, damp earth cradling a rusted tin box, etched with their code in faint scratches, SWE7. Harriet's hand trembled as she reached for it, but Miles stopped her, his own pulling it free. The lid creaked open under his touch, spilling yellowed pages into the dim light. Names jumped out, fictional enforcers like Harlan Voss, tied to a web of payoffs that had ensnared the vow, turning rides for justice into shadows of extortion. Flashes assaulted him, arguments in smoke-filled back rooms, his stand against the corruption that had claimed his wife's life in an accident too convenient to ignore. She'd begged him to run clean, to honor the family they built from scraps. The ledger was his redemption oath, unfinished until now. Jax peered over his shoulder, face hardening like forged steel. "This is dynamite, brother. Voss and his lot, they run half the hollow now, pulling strings with badges in their pockets. Exposing this, it'll stir the hive." The crew murmured agreement. A nurse from the local clinic who'd joined after patching up a vow ride turned healer in their ranks, and a veteran mechanic whose steady hands fixed more than bikes. Chosen family, each scarred by their own losses, united in the quiet code of standing firm. But doubt flickered in Miles's chest, a moral crossroads. Hand it to the authorities, corrupted as they were, or burn it clean themselves, risking the fragile peace. Arya's voice cut through, small but unyielding. "We can't let them win, Dad, Mum. She died because they twisted everything. This is our promise to make it right." Her eyes, mirrors of his own storm grey, held the echo of that willow tree vow, protect the light no matter the dark. Miles closed the box, tucking it into his jacket, the weight settling like purpose renewed. "We ride to the vow hall first. Share it with the council. No lone wolves this time. Together we honor what's left." Jax clapped his shoulder, the gesture sealing it, as the group filed out, the mill's door swinging shut behind like a chapter closing. But as they mounted up, a low hum intruded, the drone of unmarked vans cresting the hill, dust clouds billowing in their wake. Voss's men, or worse, the law bent to their will. Engines roared to life, the convoy surging forward, river glinting like a silver promise under the rising sun. Arya clung tighter, her whisper lost to the wind. "Starlight. We'll chase it." Miles gunned the throttle, leading the charge, the ledger a burning truth against his heart. Corruption loomed, but so did justice. Poetic, unyielding, forged in the loyalty of those who'd chosen to ride as one. The bend ahead curved sharp, echoing with the calls of what was to come, a father's honor pulling them into the fray, one silent vow at a time. The vans barreled down the hillside like predators scenting blood, their tires kicking up gravel that peppered the air like scattered warnings. Miles twisted the throttle, the bike surging ahead with a guttural roar that drowned the river's murmur, the convoy mirroring his lead in a tight formation of chrome and resolve. Arya's arms locked around his midsection, her small frame vibrating with the engine's pulse, but her voice cut through the wind, steady as the code that had brought them here. "They're gaining, Dad. 2 on our flank." The words snapped him alert, fragments of old instincts flooding back, evasive maneuvers through canyon twists, the sharp tang of adrenaline sharpening his senses amid the exhaust's bite. Jax's voice crackled over the radio clipped to Miles's vest, gravelly and unyielding. "Split the pack. 3 peel left to the old logging trail. Draw 'em off. Rest push for the haul. No heroes, just the ride." The Brotherhood responded without hesitation, engines splitting the air like thunderclaps as the group fractured into calculated chaos. Miles banked right, following the main vein of the road that snaked toward the Iron Vow's weathered compound on the town's ragged edge, a sanctuary of chain link and flood-lit loyalty where oaths were mended like busted frames. Behind him, the lead van swerved, its grille a looming shadow in the rearview mirror, but the decoy bikes veered sharp, their taillights winking like defiant stars before vanishing into the underbrush. The sun climbed higher, gilding the asphalt in molten hues that turned the chase into a fevered dream. Miles felt the ledger's tin edges pressing against his ribs, a talisman of buried truths now clawing for light. Memories surfaced unbidden, nights in the Vow's backroom, arguing with brothers who'd strayed, his voice rising like a storm against the deals that stained their honor. Harlan Voss, the name burned now, a ghost from the pages, a former enforcer who'd twisted the club's code into a noose, paying off badges to bury scandals and silence dissent. Miles had vowed to her mother, under that willow's sway, to cut the rut clean. But the explosion had silenced him, leaving Arya to navigate the fallout alone. No more. The road blurred, wind whipping his beard, carrying the faint, briny scent of the approaching river as they crested a rise. Arya shifted, her chin lifting against his shoulder. "Remember the river crossing? You said if we ever had to run again, we'd use the shallows, echo the water to lose the tracks." Her words unlocked another shard, a summer escape, her laughter bubbling as they splashed through knee-deep currents, the willow code born from that very bend. Miles nodded, though she couldn't see, his gloved hand briefly covering hers on his belt. "Hold on tight, kid. We're echoing it now." He signaled Jax, who relayed the pivot, the remaining bikes, 5 strong, including the clinic nurse Lena, on her sleek cruiser, and old-timer Vic with his rumbling hog, diving toward the water's edge. The river gleamed like fractured silver, shallow here, fringed by reeds that whispered secrets to the breeze. They plunged in, spray erupting in crystalline arcs that soaked leather and denim, the current tugging at wheels like reluctant hands. The van skidded to a halt on the far bank, doors slamming as figures spilled out. Rough silhouettes barking orders, their pursuit halted by the flood's unyielding barrier. Miles gunned through, water sluicing off his tires as they emerged on the opposite shore, mud caking the treads like war paint. The hall loomed ahead, its iron gates swinging open under the watch of perimeter riders, floodlights cutting the midday glare to reveal the compound's heart, garages humming with the scent of oil and weld, a central fire pit ringed by benches scarred from countless councils. Safety for the moment, but Miles's chest tightened with the weight of what came next. Unveiling the ledger meant fracturing the fragile trust that bound them. They rolled to a stop in the central yard, engines fading to ticks of heat as the crew dismounted, faces etched with the quiet fire of shared peril. Jax clapped Miles on the back, his grip a vow in itself. "Brought the storm home, brother. Let's see what she's carrying." Inside the main hall, the air hung heavy with the aroma of aged wood and faint pipe smoke, walls lined with patches from rides past, serpents coiled in eternal vigilance. The council gathered swiftly, a dozen vow members from grizzled veterans like Vic, who'd lost a leg in a standoff for justice, to younger riders like Lena, who'd traded scrubs for leathers after healing too many club wounds in shadowed alleys. No bloodlines here, just chosen scars, loyalty woven tighter than chains. Miles set the tin box on the scarred oak table, the scrape echoing like a gavel. Arya stood beside him, her presence a silent anchor, eyes scanning the faces with the wariness of one who'd learned trust the hard way. He cracked the lid, pages spilling like confessions, and began, voice low, measured, painting the web Voss had spun, payoffs to hollow sheriffs, rigged deals that turned protection into predation, the accident that claimed Arya's mother when she got too close to the truth. Gasps rippled, faces hardening as names hit home, brothers gone astray, oaths bent to greed. Jax's fist clenched, knuckles whitening. We rode clean once. This is why Miles took the hit, protecting the code. Murmurs swelled, a moral tide rising. Expose it through back channels. Anonymous drops to honest presses, or confront the hive head-on, risking the club's fragile standing. Doubt clawed at Miles, a psychological snare tightening. Handing it over meant painting targets on backs, including Arya's, the girl who'd whispered their secret and cracked his world open. But silence? That betrayed the Willow vow, the promise to stand integro against corruption's tide. Arya's hand slipped into his, small but fierce. We do it for her, Dad. For the light we chase. The council nodded, voices uniting in a chorus of resolve. No lone stands, but a collective ride toward poetic justice, loyalty as their blade. Jax stood, sealing it with a raised fist. The vow rides for truth. Prep the scouts. Voss'll come sniffing soon. Outside, the sun dipped toward afternoon, casting long shadows across the yard as riders dispersed to tasks, the hum of preparation filling the air like a gathering breath. Miles pulled Arya aside, to a quiet corner where willow branches from a potted tree brushed the wall, a nod to their past, planted by her mother. This path, it might pull us deeper, he murmured, thumb tracing her knuckles. She met his gaze, echo of his own determination shining back. But we're together now. Starlight leads us. He nodded, the weight lifting fractionally, redemption not in erasure but in the honorable steps forward. Yet as dusk crept in, painting the gates in amber, a lone scout radioed in. A black sedan idling at the hollow's edge, Voss's mark unmistakable. The hall braced, engines warming like watchful guardians, the ledger's truths a beacon drawing the storm closer. Miles stood at the window, Arya at his side, the road beyond curving into uncertainty. Honor demanded they face it, family chosen and blood alike, one silent promise at a time, fueling the fire against the encroaching dark. If this tale of lost codes and unbreakable bonds is stirring something in you, smash that like button. It helps spread these stories of quiet courage to riders everywhere. The twilight bled into the iron vow hall like ink on weathered parchment, casting elongated shadows that danced across the compound's chain-link fences. Miles stood at the window, his silhouette framed by the amber glow of floodlights, Arya's hand still warm in his, a tether against the encroaching uncertainty. The black sedan idled at the hollow's distant edge, its headlights twin eyes piercing the dusk, a silent sentinel marking Harlan Voss's inevitable approach. The air hummed with the low murmur of engines warming in the yard, the scent of hot oil and cooling metal mingling with the faint, crisp bite of evening dew on the potted willow nearby. Riders moved like ghosts in the half-light, checking chains and loads, their faces etched with the quiet resolve of men and women who'd chosen this path over easier roads. Jax approached from the shadows, his broad frame blocking the doorway, a radio crackling faintly in his vest pocket. Scouts confirm it's Voss's ride, solo for now, but he'll have backup trailing. We hold the line here, brother. No charging out blind. His voice carried the gravel of shared history, a reminder of the explosion that had nearly claimed Miles, the hands that had dragged him from the rubble when amnesia first cloaked his world. Jax had been the anchor then, piecing together the fragments of a man adrift, never pressing for the voids, but honoring the loyalty that bound them. Now, with the ledger's truths laid bare on the council table, that bond stretched taut, a moral wire ready to sing under pressure. Miles nodded, turning from the window, his eyes meeting Arya's, storm-grey mirrors reflecting the weight of promises reignited. We don't run, but we don't bleed for nothing. The ledger stays safe. Taetsar shot at cleaning the rot without dragging the whole vow under. He knelt to her level, the creak of his knees echoing the hall's aged timbers, thumb brushing a smudge of river mud from her cheek. Flashes stirred, her tiny form curled in a motel bed, whispering starlight stories to chase away night fears, the code their shield against a world that had already taken too much. "You stay inside with Lena," he murmured, voice low and steady, laced with the ache of a father reclaiming stolen years. "This is my echo to answer." Arya's grip tightened, her small frame unyielding despite the tremor in her breath. "I'm not hiding anymore, Dad. The willow bends, but it doesn't break, we promised." Her words hung like a vow renewed, pulling at the ethical snare in his chest. The council's decision, to funnel the evidence through anonymous channels, bypassing the corrupted badges that Voss had greased, felt right in the light of day, a poetic strike for justice over brute force. But night brought doubt, the psychological pull of what-ifs. What if exposure painted bigger targets? What if the shadows from their past swallowed her light again? Yet her eyes held the echo of that river crossing, fierce and unbroken, reminding him that redemption wasn't solitary, it was forged in the loyalty of those who stood close. Lena, the nurse-turned-rider with her steady hands and a gaze softened by too many mended wounds, stepped forward from the hall's side room, a medical kit slung over her shoulder like armor. "I've got her, Miles. The back alcove secure, willow view and all." She'd joined the vow after stitching up a brother in a rain-soaked alley, her own scars from a life upended by institutional betrayals, drawing her to this chosen family. No questions about the code or the girl who'd cracked Miles's amnesia, just the quiet offer of sanctuary, loyalty expressed in actions unspoken. Arya hesitated, then nodded, releasing Miles's hand with a squeeze that lingered like a promise. The yard outside stirred to life as the first wave of Voss's men crested the rise, 3 unmarked trucks rumbling in, dust clouds billowing like exhaled threats under the rising moon. Engines revved in response, the vow's convoy forming a defensive arc at the gates, chrome glinting like drawn blades. Miles mounted his bike, the familiar weight settling into his bones, the serpent patch on his jacket catching the light as a symbol of chains broken and reformed. Jack swung up beside him, the pair leading the front line, Vic and a handful of others fanning out to the flanks, the veteran mechanic's steady rumble a counterpoint to the intruder's growl. The air thickened with tension, the distant river's murmur a faint underscore to the standoff, carrying the briny whisper of shallows they'd echoed earlier. A figure emerged from the lead truck, Harlan Voss himself, tall and lean, his face shadowed under a wide-brim hat, the kind of man whose smile hid barbs. He stepped forward alone, hands raised in mock peace, but his eyes scanned the gates like a predator mapping prey. "Carter," he called out, voice amplified over the engine's idle, carrying the oily smoothness of deals gone sour. "Heard you've been digging up old dirt. Hand over the book and we call it square. No need to drag the girl into this." The words landed like a gauntlet, stirring murmurs among the vow riders, the moral outrage flickering in their stances. Voss knew of Arya, had always known. His web tangled in the threads that led to the explosion, the accident that stole her mother, twisting club honor into personal vendettas. Miles killed his engine, the sudden silence amplifying the night's chill, boots hitting gravel with deliberate weight. He strode to the gate, Jax at his side, the ledger's phantom weight against his chest, fueling a fire long banked. "Square, you poisoned the vow with your payoffs, Voss. Took my memory, my family. Left her to the shadows while you pulled strings." His voice rose, gravel rough but unbreaking, the psychological edge sharpening as buried rage surfaced. Flashes assaulted him, arguments in smoke-hazed rooms, his stand against the corruption that had claimed innocence, the vow to Arya's mother to expose it all under starlit skies. No violence here, just the truth as weapon, loyalty as shield. Voss's laugh cut short, his posture shifting as backup spilled from the trucks, silhouettes gripping shadows, intent clear in their advance. Promises are for fools, Carter. The hollow runs on favors, not codes. But the vow held firm, engines growling in warning, a wall of chosen kin refusing to yield. Arya watched from the alcove window, Lena's arm around her, the potted willow's leaves rustling softly as if echoing the standoff's breath. Miles met Voss's gaze, the air electric with unspoken threats. "This ends tonight. Your web unravels or we ride it down," Jack signaled, gates creaking open just enough for parley, the confrontation teetering on justice's knife edge. Tense minutes stretched, words traded like barbs in the moonlit yard, Voss probing for weakness while the vow's unity stood unyielding. A scout's radio buzzed, more vans inbound, forcing Voss to retreat with a snarled promise of return, his trucks peeling away into the dark. The gates clanged shut, relief mingling with wariness as the convoy dispersed, but Miles knew it was a reprieve, not victory. Back inside, Arya rushed to him, burying her face in his jacket, the scent of leather and river mud, a comfort reborn. "We held," she whispered, voice trembling with the night's echo. Jax clapped his shoulder, eyes gleaming with the fire of battles unspoken. Council's drops are set, truth hits the wires by dawn, but Voss won't fade quiet. Miles pulled Arya close, the hall's warmth wrapping around them like a fragile vow. Redemption demanded more, sacrifices in the quiet hours, honor tested against the tide. Outside, the moon hung high, willow branches swaying in the breeze, whispering of bends yet to come, the family's light-chasing starlight through the gathering storm. The road curved onward, pulling them deeper into the fray, one unbreakable bond at a time. The moon's silver veil draped the iron vow hall like a shroud of uneasy truce, its light filtering through the potted willow's leaves to cast dappled patterns on the scarred oak table. Miles sat with Arya curled against his side, the warmth of her small form a quiet defiance against the night's chill that seeped through the walls. The ledger lay open before them, its pages a map of betrayals now committed to anonymous channels, digital drops seeded into the ether by Jax's tech-savvy scouts, truths destined to ripple through backroom presses and honest whispers by dawn. The air inside hummed with the low murmur of the council dispersing, the scent of pipe smoke and fresh-brewed coffee lingering like remnants of resolve. But peace felt fragile, a held breath in the face of Voss's snarled retreat, his parting glare promising shadows deeper than the river's bend. Jax lingered at the table's edge, his massive hands splayed on the wood, knuckles scarred from rides that had tested more than metal. "Drops alive, brother." By morning, the hollow's underbelly cracks wide, Voss's strings cut, badges scrambling to distance themselves. His voice rumbled low, carrying the weight of oaths renewed, eyes flicking to Arya with the protective glint of an uncle forged in fire. Jax had been the one to shield Miles post-explosion, nursing him through blank stares and phantom aches, never wavering when amnesia painted Miles as a stranger to his own soul. Now, with the girl's code unlocking those chains, Jax's loyalty extended seamless, a chosen family's vow, unbreaking as the serpent on their patches. Miles nodded, his fingers tracing the ledger's faded ink, fragments of memory surfacing like ghosts in the steam from his untouched mug. Names blurred into visions, backroom deals under flickering bulbs, the acrid tang of cheap whiskey masking the rot as Voss twisted protection rackets into extortion webs. He'd stood against it then, vowing to Arya's mother in the willow's shade to expose the poison before it claimed them all. Her eyes, soft as starlight, had held his promise. Echo it back, Miles, for her. The explosion had silenced that echo, leaving Arya to wander foster shadows, whispering their code into the void until it reached him here, in Eldridge Hollow's unforgiving embrace. Tears pricked again, not the flood of reunion but a steady burn for the years her light had chased alone. Arya stirred, her head lifting, eyes shadowed but sharp. What if they come back before it hits Voss? He knows about the code now, from the alley men. Her voice trembled faintly, the psychological weight pressing like the backpack she'd clutched in the rain, secrets too heavy for 12 years. Miles pulled her closer, the leather of his jacket creaking softly. It sent a familiar armor mingling with the hall's aged timber. Doubt clawed at him, an ethical storm. The drops were Justice's quiet blade, poetic in their anonymity, sparing blood for truth. But if Voss struck first, loyalty demanded more. Sacrifice, perhaps, the kind that honored the willow's bend without snapping. "He won't touch you," Miles murmured, voice gravel steady. "The vows are echo now. We ride it out together." Outside, the compound stirred under the moon's watchful gaze, floodlights humming to life as perimeter riders circled like vigilant hounds. Vic, the veteran mechanic, tinkered with a bike in the yard, his prosthetic leg glinting as he adjusted chains with hands steady from battles unspoken. Losses in stands against corrupt runs that had cost him more than limb. Lena moved among them, distributing water and quiet words, her nurse's instincts weaving care into the Brotherhood's fabric. No questions about the ledger's ghosts or the girl's whispered code, just actions, silent as the river's flow, binding them in the family chosen from life's wreckage. A sharp crackle from Jax's radio shattered the hush, scouts reporting movement on the hollow's rim, not trucks this time, but a lone figure slipping through the underbrush, silhouette lean and purposeful. "Voss's runner," Jax growled, standing abruptly, the chair scraping like a warning. Miles rose, easing Arya toward Lena with a nod, her hand lingering in his. A father's grip, rediscovered and fierce. "Stay low. This might be the echo, we answer." He followed Jax to the door, the night air rushing in cool and brined, carrying the distant rush of water over stones. The yard tensed, engines idling low, chrome catching moonlight in flashes that evoked the convoy's earlier charge. The runner emerged at the gate, hands raised, a satchel slung over one shoulder, disheveled, eyes darting like a man who'd run from more than shadows. "Carter! Truce flag!" he called, voice hoarse over the engine's purr. Jax signaled the gates ajar, rifles loose but ready, the vow's wall unyielding. The man stepped forward, dropping the satchel at Miles's feet, its zipper gaping to reveal bundled photos and a single envelope, yellowed like the ledger's pages. "From Voss. Says if you drop the spreads, this stays buried. Your wife's file, the real one, not accident." His play to silence her questions. The words landed like gravel in still water, rippling through Miles's chest, unlocking a buried shard. Her final night, arguments in the dim kitchen, Voss's name whispered as threat, then the crash that stole her, ruled mishap by greased palms. Rage surged, hot and moral, but Miles held gloved hand closing on the envelope without opening it. Flashes assaulted, her laughter echoing under willows, the promise to protect their light, broken by amnesia and time. This was Voss's snare, psychological barbs to fracture resolve, trading justice for silence. "Tell him the drops are done," Miles said, voice low thunder. "Truth rides free now. Your boss's web unravels at dawn." The runner nodded, backing away, vanishing into the dark as gates clanged shut. Jax's hand gripped his shoulder, steady as anchor chains. "He played dirty, but we hold clean." Inside, Miles knelt before Arya, envelope in hand, her eyes wide with the echo of old fears. "Mom, it was him," he whispered. The confession of Vow's fracture mended in sharing. Tears traced her cheeks, but she nodded, small hand on his. "Then we finish it. For her light." The hall wrapped around them, Brotherhood's murmur a counterpoint to the night's hush, loyalty's fire banked but burning. Dawn crept closer, the willow's leaves rustling softly, whispering of revelations yet to break. But as stars faded, a low rumble echoed from the horizon, Voss's full force, drawn by the drop's first ripples, the storm converging on the hall's gates. Miles stood, pulling Arya with him, the envelope tucked away like a final promise. Redemption's road bent sharp now, honor demanding they face the tide, chosen family at their side, one unbreakable code fueling the charge into light's fragile grasp. The air thickened with the approaching growl, engines massing like a gathering wrath, but in that suspended breath Miles felt the weight lift, not gone, but shared. Jax rallied the council with a raised fist, voices uniting in the vow's eternal coil. Outside, the river sang on, echoing their stand, the serpent ready to strike for justice's dawn. Dawn fractured the horizon like a promise kept, its pale light bleeding across the iron vow hall's chain-link fences, turning dew-kissed gravel into a mosaic of glinting resolve. The rumble swelled, Voss's convoy cresting the rise, 6 blacked-out trucks and a dozen bikes, their engines a guttural chorus that vibrated the air, carrying the sharp tang of exhaust and impending reckoning. Miles stood at the forefront. Jacket zipped tight over the ledger's remnants and the envelope's bitter truths, Arya's hand slipping from his as Lena guided her back to the alcove's shadow. The girl's eyes met his one last time, fierce with the echo of their code. Starlight, Willow, Echo, 7, a silent vow that no storm could drown. Jax flanked him, the council arrayed behind in a wall of leather and steel, Vic's steady rumble, and Lena's quiet poise weaving into the Brotherhood's unyielding line. Engines idled low, a counterpoint to the intruder's roar, the river's distant murmur threading through like an undercurrent of calm amid the fray. Miles felt the psychological pull sharpen, doubt's whisper testing the edges. This confrontation could shatter the fragile peace, drag innocence into the web Voss had spun for years. But honor demanded the stand, justice not in vengeance, but in the poetic unraveling of lies, loyalty as the blade that cut clean. The drops had ignited. By now, whispers of corruption rippled through the hollow's veins, badges shifting uneasy in their pockets. Voss dismounted from the lead bike, his lean frame cutting through the dawn mist like a shadow uncoiling, hat tipped low but eyes burning with the cornered gleam of a man whose empire teetered. He strode forward alone at first, hands loose at his sides, the trucks fanning out in a loose arc that choked the road. "Carter," he called, voice slicing the tension, oily with false camaraderie. "Those leaks? Sloppy work. Pull 'em. And we ride away clean. The girl's safe. Your wife's file stays buried. Family's what matters, right?" The words twisted like barbs, probing for fracture, but Miles held steady, the scent of wet earth grounding him as memories flooded, her mother's final echo begging him to shield their light from such darkness. "No deals, Voss," Miles replied, voice gravel rough, carrying across the yard like a thrown gauntlet. "You twisted the vow, poisoned oaths for greed, took her, left Arya to shadows while I rode blind. The truth's out now. Ride's free." Murmurs rippled through Voss's ranks, unease flickering as the first radio crackles betrayed the drop's impact. Anonymous tips hitting lines, honest voices amplifying the ledger's ghosts. Jack stepped up, his presence a mountain at Miles's side, fist clenched but open to parley. "Stand down. The hollow sees you for what you are. No more strings." Tension coiled, the air electric with the hum of idling machines, dawn's light gilding chrome accents into blades of gold. Voss's face hardened, a snarl breaking his facade as he signaled his crew forward, boots crunching gravel, shadows advancing like a tide. But the vow met them, engines surging in warning, a phalanx of chosen kin refusing the breach. No shots rang out. This was no blaze of violence, but a moral siege, truths clashing like wills under the rising sun. Vic gunned his bike, blocking a flank, his voice booming over the roar. "We rode for justice once, won't bend now." Lena's cruiser hummed beside him, her gaze steady, a healer's resolve turned guardian. Voss lunged a step, desperation cracking his poise, but Jax's shout halted the surge. "Enough!" And in that pause, sirens wailed from the hollow's core. Genuine badges this time, drawn by the spreading fire of exposure. Lights flashed blue and red, cutting through the mist, unmarked vans peeling away as Voss's men faltered, loyalty fracturing under the weight of unraveling lies. Voss spun, cursing the dawn, mounting up with a final glare that promised nothing but retreat. His convoy scattered, engines fading into the distance like echoes swallowed by the river, leaving the yard hushed save for the vow's steady purr. Relief washed through Miles like cool water over fevered skin, his shoulders easing as Jax clapped his back, the gesture sealing the standoff's end. The arriving law, cleaner faces, badges untainted by Voss's grease, approached cautiously, notebooks out, the ledger's truths already painting their path. No arrests in the yard, just statements traded in the growing light, the poetic justice unfolding without a drop spilled. Miles turned to the hall, finding Arya at the door, her small frame silhouetted against the warm glow within, eyes shining with the light they'd chased. He pulled her into an embrace, the leather of his jacket enveloping her, the scent of exhaust and earth a testament to roads reclaimed. "It's over, kid," he murmured, voice thick with the burn of redemption, tears held back but felt in the tremble of his hold. Not for the amnesia erased, but for the promise fulfilled. The willows bend, straightening under loyalty's weight, family chosen and blood weaving into one unbreakable coil. Jax joined them, the council gathering in quiet nods, Vic's grin creasing his weathered face, Lena's hand on Arya's shoulder a silent welcome. As the sun crested fully, bathing the compound in golden hues, the river sang clearer, its flow echoing the code that had bridged their lost years. Voss's web lay exposed, corruption's shadows fleeing the light, justice a quiet victory forged in honor's fire. Miles mounted his bike one last time that morning, Arya behind him, the vow convoy forming loose around them, not for flight but for the ride ahead, bends curving toward new horizons. The serpent on his patch gleamed, chains broken, promises eternal. In the hollow's embrace, father and daughter chased starlight together, the road whispering of legacies built on silent stands, loyalty's echo carrying them forward into a dawn unshadowed. Thank you for riding this road with us. These tales of honor and heart are brighter with you along. If Miles and Arya's story touched your soul, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more confessions from the open way. Your journey fuels ours.